Hi, welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast. My name is Matt Wood, and this is episode 41. Cary Quintana from Cary Q Wines is our guest today. She's making really vibrant and food-friendly wines from great vineyard sites. We hear about her journey from owning a wine shop in Miami to making wine in California, how she keeps a hands-on approach with all her wines, and what she looks to bring out in each grape variety. Hope you enjoy. Here we go. I was wondering how you got interested in wine. What kind of drew you to it initially?
So I actually discovered wine in my early 20s. And it was really an aha moment, I guess, to go. Everybody has an aha moment. And I went to some fancy restaurant, very young, didn't know much about anything, and got invited to this restaurant. And they served us this really nice fancy bottle of wine, which looked fancy because it was a fancy restaurant.
Okay.
And at that moment, I tried the wine and I was like, wow, this is wine? And I just, that was my aha moment. And, ironically, it was, a Napa Cabernet.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you what...
like Freemark Abbey or something
okay.
like that out in Napa. And I'm living in Florida at this point, right? I haven't moved to California yet. And I realized, oh my goodness, like this is what wine tastes like. Like my entire experience, young, was drinking all sorts of different things, but not wine. Wine was too sophisticated, right?
Yeah.
But that really kind of launched me into, I want to learn more about this.
Okay.
The history, all the stories behind it, the varietals. I mean, there was just a never-ending thing about wine and its history and its culture and just everything. And we hadn't even touched production. That was not even like top of mind.
Yeah.
It was just really exploring. And I, hilariously at my young 20s now, visited every single wine shop in Miami. And, they loved me because I'd walk in and be like, can you just pick out like 6 bottles of wine or a case of wine?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what they are. Just make sure they don't come from the same place or they're the same varietals. And I just had this crazy notion that I needed to try a lot of wine.
Okay.
And the more wine I tried, the more varietals I tried, the more I learned. And it was really like, that was pretty fun. Expensive fun.
Yeah.
But I have to say, at that point, I started really, and that took years.
Yeah, but it was kind of like a self-taught kind of learning process.
It was. I would go back to my friend's house with like 3 bottles and open it up, with their parents, and they'd look at me like, no, not going to happen. But that is how I got into wine. I just realized how incredibly interesting it was. So,
what were you doing for a job then? You kind of transitioned, I know, into running a wine shop.
Yeah.
Was that like a second career kind of, or?
It's many careers, but I've had a really, couple decades career in, advertising, ad tech sales.
Okay.
And back in the day, my early 20s, I was doing great, mid-20s, doing great, at the beginning of the digital boom, had this awesome sales job selling things that people knew nothing about, like digital and banners and all that stuff, but it was great. And around 2004, after discovering wine, I thought it was a really good idea to quit my job and open a wine shop. And this is the kind of stuff you do when you're really young and you don't have responsibilities, but you think you can conquer the world. And I had this notion, this was 2004, right, that not only did I want to quit my job that was paying me well, but I wanted to open a wine shop, and I wanted to also focus only on small production wines. I wanted to represent every single region and country out there. Okay. Small production wine was like my thing. I was so fascinated that there was more than just the usual suspects. And so I quit my job in advertising sales. But that has been really the career I've been in. And when I opened my wine shop, it was 2005. I loved it. I loved the idea of talking about wine, selling wine, drinking wine. I had ridiculous reps standing in my door trying to taste me on 20 bottles of wine in one given shot, which was really hard, but a bad life, right? But it was great. It was, it taught me, it really got me, not only the education around countries, regions, varietals, but also just really taught me the art of hand selling.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking to consumers that don't know what Tanat is, or even Malbec at that moment. But it was really cool to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2008 came and the recession hit, and we all decided that, well, it's time to go back to work.
Yeah.
Party's over, right? But I did continue in my ad tech career, and this was all in Florida until 2013.
Okay.
And 2013, there was a couple personal reasons, that brought me out to California. And then I started thinking about the production side.
Okay.
Because now I'm like, oh, I'm in the backyard of like everything I love.
Yeah.
And although I knew I wanted to produce wine and it was interesting to me, you're in Miami, Florida. Unless you're making fruit wine, which I did not want to.
Yeah. Some muscadine or something.
Yeah. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but production came later. Mm-hmm. Just a wine appreciation of everything started off this whole crazy, second career, because I still continued my main career.
Yeah.
Listen, somebody's got to pay for the wine.
Yeah.
Someone's got to pay for the grapes. So that was my journey.
I imagine having a wine store focused on really small producers in Miami is not the easiest thing. And
Not
it
at
probably
all.
does require a lot of like hand selling and educating people about what it is.
Absolutely.
Like, what this bottle is.
Yeah, and it taught me a lot about brand loyalty, right? So you've got folks coming in knowing that they want a certain brand. And then, the majority of the folks that walk in, are obviously open to being introduced to something new. And I think price point always plays a part in it. But yeah, it was not easy. It was doable, right? I think the fascinating part of the story is, I'm a small wine producer by choice. I love spending time with my wine. I intentionally don't want to produce so much that I lose sight of what I really love to do.
Okay.
It's very easy in this career, in this space, to really get logged up with demands from the distributor, demands from your hosts, your retailers. So kind of talking and hand selling a wine and talking about its history, background, and even the varietal, I think it was successful.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Right.
No doubt. And, Bevmo was like right around the corner.
Yeah.
So I truly, truly had to hand sell my way through this. But we made it. We created a huge loyalty to the point where even today I still stay in touch with some of my customers.
Oh, nice.
And they reach out and they're in Florida and they're still, checking in and stuff. So that was the fun part. But the hard part.
Right. Do you think it gave you good practice for selling your own wines? I hear a lot of people say that's their least favorite and the hardest part.
When you're
of
selling
the
your
job.
own wine, it's a whole different thing, right? Like that's your baby. Like, I think I learned really quickly, don't take it personal. It's super subjective. People are going to love your wine. They're going to hate your wine, but it's okay as long as you're okay with it. As long as you're producing a good product, a reliable product and a good product, I think you should be okay with that. Not everyone is going to do that, but yes, it's hard.
Yeah. So you must have started kind of exploring the wineries pretty quickly once you moved to California.
I did. I landed in 2013. I had a weekend to pick my spot where I was going to live.
Oh,
like
okay.
that was like super spontaneous.
That's quick, yeah.
Rented my house, changed my job, and came out here. And I coincidentally ended up moving to the East Bay. I knew I didn't want to be in San Francisco. I wanted to be in Berkeley or Oakland or something to that effect. And yeah, I started. I mean, this is 2013, early days. I think Donkey and Goat was here first. They were definitely here first, and they were probably the only ones here. And I did start exploring, but I also started exploring. Well, what do I want to do? I'm in wine country, and I wasn't thinking production yet. I wanted to get into something to do with wine. I wasn't sure I wanted to go into retail again. So I went and I did some weekend stints in tasting rooms.
Okay.
Out in Napa. Not for me. Tour buses, party buses, not for me.
Okay.
But it was great to see behind the scenes these tasting rooms that, the operation behind them and these big companies, right, running this business. So definitely didn't like that, but I definitely enjoyed the drive up every morning, early in the morning.
Beautiful drive.
And then, I kind of wanted to figure out, well, how do I take my retail experience and kind of translate it into something with wine?
Yeah.
But I always knew I wanted to do production. Production was just interesting. So I started taking some UC Davis classes. I mean, they have some amazing, day classes, weekend classes.
Yeah, kind of the extension courses.
The extension
and
courses
stuff.
were amazing. And I started kind of wrapping my brain around it. But it really all began because I was driving around Berkeley in the Gilman district here, and there's this building with this barrel in the wall on right above the door. And I was like, what is that? It doesn't look like it's anything. It looks abandoned. It doesn't look like there's a wine tasting or anything. But I kept seeing people walking in and out. So I decided to get out and walk in. And oh my gosh, it was a winery. It was a tasting room. It was right on Camellia Street.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be that's, the original place where Chris started his production. All of a sudden I'm walking in, there's Steve Edmonds, and then we've got two winemakers showing their wines. And it turns out that one of the winemakers, I had bought like 3 cases in Florida as a connoisseur.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I connected with him. His name is Sasha Verhagen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he had his own label called Eno Wines at the time. And we just became we started talking, and I said, hey, I would love to help you with your retail, with the tasting room. Like, I can do that, and I can help you. Maybe you can teach me how to make wine.
Okay.
And then that's how it all began. That was the crazy story. And then I started going every weekend, and I didn't stop for 4 years.
Okay.
Just volunteering, and I'm there. And that's kind of where I got my, harvest experience. It was I call it the urban harvest experience, because I wasn't doing the winery, the vineyards. I was actually in the cellar, and if you know that building, it's a small building.
Yeah,
it's a very historic small building.
Legendary West Berkeley.
Oh yeah,
winery.
Yep. If you're gonna cut your teeth, you want to cut your teeth there, because nothing there worked, and in a good way, right? You really learned the operational side of being in a small facility that really required your attention to everything. So 2014 was really hey, I've got some extra fruit. Do you want to buy it? I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what to do with it. So that's how I started. The UC Davis, I started the wine certification course, did that, and a lot of shadowing, a lot of jumping in. And 2014 was born, and I got so lucky. This is the part I realized that nobody wanted to sell me fruit. Who are you?
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you do? And nobody, and I get it. It's expensive, and these vineyards are respectable, right? I wasn't talking to any vineyard. I was talking to Phil Couturi from he was managing these amazing organic vineyards, and getting folks to listen to me. And I had nothing to show for it, but I knew I wanted to make wine. I didn't want to make it from just any grapes. I wanted them to be from something that had a meaning, a sustainable, footprint. Yeah. And so my first fruit was from Phil Couturi.
Okay.
Which was ignorance is bliss, right?
Was it Grenache?
It was a Grenache and Mourvèdre.
Okay.
It's 2014, Grenache Mourvèdre. I loved Grenache because in Miami, we have such access to wines from Spain. And Garnacha and Monastrell. Of course, we're talking Spain, right? California is a whole different, but that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So label starts 2014, half a barrel, babysitting that stuff, firstborn, learning the science around it, panicking at every turn. But it came out pretty good. I was pretty proud of it. It didn't go bad. That's all I wanted, was just a sound wine.
Yeah.
And then I, just took off from there. I was fortunate enough to, work with Phil Couturi for 3 more years.
Okay.
I inherited the contract, and really that was my luck, right? It was just the right time, right place, and from there it was really just very much strategically thinking about the kind of wine I wanted to make, which A, was one I wanted to drink, B, was one that was as natural as possible.
Okay.
And really 3 was just like this is the varietal. This is what it tastes like for real.
Okay.
From here.
Yeah.
And I learned that really fast with Grenache because we have so many different microclimates. And, when I'm dealing with this vineyard in Sonoma, you've got some big, heady, masculine tasting Grenache Mourvedres.
Yeah.
And then I quickly learned through all the other vineyards, how distinct and that's where kind of Grenache stayed as my base.
Yeah. I noticed you work with it a lot and do some
Yeah.
other blends.
I've gone
with
away
it,
from
right?
it lately.
Okay.
In the last few harvests, I've gone away from it because I've started to really dabble and be interested in other varietals that are really underrepresented. I think Grenache is amazing. I love Mourvedre. But I met Ann Kramer and from Shake Ridge back in 2016 in a Paso Robles conference, and poor woman, she was so terrified of me. I was like I was fangirling her completely. But we talked for a long time, and I remember Angela Osborne from Tribute to Grace introducing me, and I told Ann, I was like, I really want to work with your fruit one day.
Yeah.
She's like, okay. And I did. I waited 3 years to be on her list.
Okay.
And no, I waited a couple of years, and she finally called me and said, and she actually said, hey, you can work. I've got Barbera. I'm like, no. I mean, who says that to Ann, right? No, I really don't want to work with Barbera. I'm not interested in that kind of grape varietal. I really want Grenache. It's like, all right, well, you're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
So 2017 was that,
It seems like you work with really great vineyards from sort of each region that you work with, and really great growers.
I've gotten real lucky. But, I think also it's one of the things that translates from my career is, the ability to connect and to really source. You're not just sourcing fruit, you're sourcing relationships out.
Yeah.
It's all about just the relationships. And I remember reaching out to Marcus Bokish and saying, hey, I love the fact that you focus on Spanish varietals. Like, that's my sweet spot. I love it. I'm of Cuban heritage. I drink Spain but I also loved that he was a farmer at heart, and he had a passion for it, and he was generous with his time. And I'm sure you've heard this before. He takes time to really show you around. And but it was the relationship fostering. As much as we want fruit, I also tend to kind of do a background check on them, right?
Yeah.
Like, check them out. Like,
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you do it? How do you grow it? How do you farm it? What's your philosophy? And I had a target list. Literally, I knew I wanted to work with these folks, these folks, these folks. I want to do this grape, and I'd wait for it.
Yeah.
And Ann Kramer was one. Above and beyond the fact that she's a fantastic, fantastic viticulturist and amazing human, I just respect, the respect that she has for her land.
Yeah.
And how easy it is to work with her. Marcus Bokish, same thing.
Okay.
Like, super smart guy, amazing at what he does, passionate, love that. So, done. I want to buy fruit from you.
Yeah.
Chuck from, Goldbud.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I probably tried to connect with Chuck for about 2 years.
Okay.
Before he paid attention to me. And, it's okay. I'm willing to wait. For me, it's just about like being excited about who I'm working with. And he's been fantastic. So yeah, I haven't worked with a lot of vineyards, but I'm really I want to work with the folks that make me happy. And this is what makes me happy. So
yeah,
it's worked out a little bit.
I think the connection should go both ways. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like a job
Oh, it absolutely
interview.
does. Absolutely.
You're
These folks
interviewing
don't
them
work-
as much as
Yeah.
they're interviewing you.
Absolutely. I think the relationship has to be easy, and, there's got to be a like-mindedness. Chuck is amazing in the sense that he will hear you and understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to produce, and kind of pair you up, with the best, of the best vineyards that he's got based on farming. And, all of them have been. So, yeah, I've been real picky. And I've been real lucky because it's a tough market. It's a tough thing to do. And, I've been doing this for 10 years, but I'm still new.
Yeah.
I still think there's tons to learn. So,
I wanted to jump back real quick, but was there anything that you kind of took away from working at Camellia Street or with Sasha that you like still find yourself really thinking about today, or that really stayed
Do not
with
take
you?
shortcuts.
Okay.
Like, stay the course, be patient. I think winemaking is a big portion is being patient, really paying attention, science, the numbers, just don't cut corners. It's the art of winemaking is twofold. It's a creative aspect, and then you've got your science, and your science tells you your story as well as to what the eye can't see, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I learned about Camellia is I learned to work really hard and just don't cut corners and pay attention to what you're tasting and smelling and seeing, and I carry that with me. I always, I stayed in Camellia from 2014 to 2020. I made a decision to move to Punchdown in Santa Rosa, only because it just was going to give me a little more legroom.
Okay.
And, when I got to this really fantastic looking winery that was like super state of the art, I was so glad I had started in a winery that wasn't state of the art, but because it taught me my baseline
Okay.
of things that you do need to know. You do need to know how to drive a forklift. You do need to know how to connect this hose, and you do need to know how to. You should know how to do that. As a matter of fact, I insisted over there. It's like I need to jump in. I want to jump in. I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to do anything. So I took away that the foundation of just really doing the work. Don't cut corners. Pay attention to what you have in front of you. Don't overcommit. And try to enjoy the process.
Okay.
It can be nerving. The wine's going to end up doing what it wants to do.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's you're going to set it on a course, but everything that happens in a vineyard is that decision, and from there, it's just doing the things that you need to do, really kind of shepherd it through. I'm probably, to answer your next question, I very much international winemaking and minimalist, and the fruit source is the most important thing for me. That's kind of where it starts for me. I have ultimate confidence that if the fruit source is great, that things turn out, and they do. And every now and then you've got a funky year. You got fires and drought and frost, and that happens. And then at that point, you adapt. But adaptability is the other thing Camellia taught me.
Okay. Kind of roll with the punches.
Adapt with Camellia Street, right?
I know you said you really like kind of that purity of the varietal fruit. How do you go about kind of bringing that out in the wines?
Well, I think, like I said, fruit source is going to be the best.
Okay.
You learn from every vineyard what that varietal is going to do. And I think just treating it really gentle and just understanding what it can and cannot do, and doing, just knowing the chemistry of what you're working with. I think sensorially vigilant is probably the thing I practice the most. I'm always tasting and smelling and tasting, and always just kind of, I love to see the evolvement. There are times I'll go home and I'm like, I don't know what happened. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not the same wine I tasted like 2 weeks ago. But then I go back and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? So it all works out.
Yeah.
What I learned is, simplicity, letting it kind of do its thing, understanding what's going on. And then I've been very fortunate that, out of 10 years I've made wine, I feel like I'm happy with every vintage, but I've learned to understand that every vintage is super individual. Like, I don't care if I did a Grenache Mourvèdre from this vineyard, same row, picked on the same day, it's going to be different. And I love that. That's the part of wine that I love. It's the individuality, the story it says, and what happened that year. And, I made 2 pick pulls.
Okay.
I made a pick pull from Lodi in a year that we had a massive heat wave, 120-degree heat wave. It wasn't a good idea to go taste the grapes during that day.
Sure.
And then I made the same pick pull a year later from El Dorado. Made different decisions, but I also had a different situation, right?
Yeah.
So Mother Nature really dictates. These two are great. These are two fantastic white wines that tell a different story, and that's what they were.
Yeah.
So, but I do find that sometimes, folks don't think that way. So, they have this idea that a grape varietal should taste a certain way, and that's the way it is. And I don't do anything to my grapes. I don't add anything. I don't really do anything other than a small amount of sulfur at bottling, right? And
Right.
maybe at the beginning. But for the most part, they all turn out to be their own thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of it you feel like is kind of staying engaged and thoughtful
Absolutely.
about the process. And
Sanitation is key. Keeping it clean. When you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not clean. It's clean. It's clean again, right? Like, that's the other thing I took away from Community Street.
okay.
I used to tell my partner, my wife now, that she'd help me sanitize before taking the bins out or before the fruit came in, and I had this cycle here. You have to do it 3 times, right? And you did 3 times, great. Do it one more time, just in case.
Yeah.
So it's just, even though you think it's clean, right? So yeah, that's my OCD there.
Okay.
Speaking a little bit.
Well, for cleanliness and a natural winery, it's probably not the worst thing that you could have.
No,
So
it's important, right?
yeah, are there grapes or regions that you haven't worked with yet that you
Oh yeah.
want to?
I mean, so I've worked with Grenache, Mourvèdre, Tempranillo, Syrah, Picpoul, Graciano, and Cinsault, which is my
Okay.
favorite new grape lately. I would love to work with Spanish region grapes like Godello,
Okay.
even Chirello, which is one of the 3 grapes that make sparkling. I'm working on Marcus Bookish with that one. And Mencia, another Cap Frankish kind of grape varietal. And I know that there's some plantings out here in California, but that's kind of like on my wish list,
Okay.
so we'll see. They're not easy to get, so, and all
Yeah.
the things have to align, right? Like the farming has to align and all that stuff.
Yeah. I guess Marcus probably knows more about those than
Yeah.
than most folks
Oh, yeah.
do. So
Yeah, he's pretty savvy about that.
have you gone back and worked in Sonoma
I have
at all?
not.
Okay.
I have not. I just, doing a couple wine events, I realized that the last, I don't know, 5-6 years of my, with the exception of Lodi, I've really stayed in the Sierra foothills.
Okay. Yeah.
I love the fruit from there. I'm okay with staying there. I think there's so much to discover still. I love the style of Grenache that comes out of there, Mourvèdre that comes out of there. I feel like, and I hate to do like the feminine masculine thing because we're not doing that, right? But the wines that I'm making from the Sierra foothills are just more delicate. They're just softer, and they're just nice. Easy. I like that. I don't want something in your face. I'm not a big fruit forward kind of. My wines tend to be more fruit friendly, so I like the Sierra foothills.
Okay.
I'd say something from the Central Coast at some point, right? Sonoma's great. It just depends on the opportunity.
Yeah. Do you think being of Cuban descent, does that change how you make your wines or like what you're looking for in the wines?
No, I think my Cuban heritage. I added it to my story because. So let's talk about women in wine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got tons of amazing women that are behind the scenes. I don't think we talk enough about heritage, and I think it's important to me. It doesn't. It just not something I hear a lot of here in California, and I think it's. I want people to know I'm from a Hispanic background. For whatever reason, it's not even a marketing thing. It's just that's who I am, and does it change how I make my wine? No, Cubans didn't make wine.
Yeah.
They made cigars, and sugar cane, right? Came out of there. But I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the heritage. And, believe it or not, I don't find many Cubans out in California. So I think it's just fun to kind of say. It's a little useless fact.
Yeah.
Maybe not useless, but, fun fact. the heritage behind it.
Yeah, there's not a huge Cuban population in California.
No.
But yeah, when I visit my wife's family in Florida, there's many more.
I'm so happy I know how to
So-
cook Cuban food because I still am looking for that perfect Cuban restaurant. So,
Anything you especially like to cook?
oh, anything Cuban, you name it, I'll call it.
Okay.
Just call me.
I was going to ask you about, I think it also says on your story kind of being the one woman operation. And I think we spoke about that a little bit where you're like staying vigilant with the
Intentionally, yeah.
wines and kind of doing everything in the tanks and connecting hoses and everything. But I guess what's it mean to you that it's kind of all yours for better or worse?
Well, I don't want to call myself a control freak. I probably am. But, I haven't thought about it. I mean, I guess I started thinking about it when I really started getting myself out there and doing more distributing and more events. I realized that I make wine, I source out my vineyards, I build my relationships, I bottle and create my labels, and then I'm also self-distributing. Well, I was. And I'm doing events, I'm doing everything. It's a lot. I think at the beginning being, a small production still means a lot to me. It still means that I get to work with stuff that's fun for me, and I'm doing it because I love and I'm excited about this and I have a lot of inspiration around this year, varietal, whatever.
Yeah.
As I've gotten a little bigger, I've found myself losing that, and I've had to kind of bring myself back to the fact that, well, yeah, now it's not fun. So you just go back to, and I think that's where the small production comes in, where it has to be fun. It has to bring some joy in your life, right? Joy of the job cannot be gone, because this is a hard career to be doing it all by yourself. Do I see myself getting a little bit tinier, bigger? Absolutely. Yeah. But it's gotta bring joy.
Okay.
So, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. What's the part of the process that gives you the most joy?
Making the wine. Like being in the production side, like being one with it. Like harvest is magical.
Okay.
The anxiety building up to that pick is always, actually, it's not bad. It's actually fun. Vineyard visits are amazing. They're fun. They get you out in the sun. They get you out thinking about things that you don't typically think every day about. There's a sense of just, it all comes together like that. And once the fruit comes in, it's like, go, 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 right? Like that's the production side. But I think the events leading up to harvest, although nerve-wracking because you've got all this preparation, is also the fun part.
Yeah.
It's kind of like where the magic starts. And of course, seeing it to fruition, right? You're bottling your wine and you hope that you're super excited about it, which, knock on wood, I have been. That's also fun. That's also rewarding. Yeah. And then, of course, the hustle, the daily hustle that all of us have to endure to stand behind a product that you have this passion for and that you've, have some sweat equity in it, right? Because listen, it's a very capital forward kind of business.
Yeah.
But you have to have passion for it. It's kind of like, those are the folks that really last. The ones that really love it, enjoy it, get it, and kind of hang on to those moments of the magic for them that keeps it going. So
I know you are working with Amy Atwood. Does that feel better to have?
Oh my gosh. I'm super
Not
excited.
as much self-distribution.
No, super excited. She's amazing. Her team is incredible. I am thrilled. And I think there's a couple of reasons why I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that it's her. I'm thrilled that it's a woman-owned business. I'm thrilled that her team is amazing. And yeah, I think it's, hopefully going to be a fruitful partnership. So it does, obviously, half the battle is being represented correctly out there.
Yeah.
Now you're empowering someone else to tell your story. And that's a big deal. So,
yeah. It's feel hard to let go of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. A lot. Very hard to let go. But, I feel like someone's going to be telling my story, right? And it's empowering to support another woman, business, and I'm all in. So
Nice. Seems like you're in good company. There's a lot of other good producers that
I think so.
they represent.
And, she's super smart, and she's a great businesswoman, and she's really great with her wine. So
yeah,
it's very. She's very. Just her decisions are very much strategic but smart. So.
Okay. It seems like you have some newer release wines.
Yeah. So. Cinso. I was talking to you about
Yeah.
Cinso. That is my first venture with Chuck from Gold Bud Farms. It's a beautiful wine. I've been wanting to work with Cinso for a very long time. If you look at some of the stuff I've been doing in the last few years, you've got a single vineyard Cinso, you've got a single vineyard Mourvèdre, you've got a Graciano. With Shakerage, I love the blends, and I co-ferment. That's my thing. I don't blend. Okay. I co-ferment. To me, it's just kind of integration is like, I love that stuff. Obviously, we're integrating with like-minded varietals, but Shakerage has always been that place for me. And then I've been working with, I just released a beautiful Cinso. It was, I called it Crazy Perfect because it was crazy perfect. It was like, it came in, the fruit was the biggest, these are the biggest berries I've ever seen.
Right.
I was like, this is weird. But they were juicy and they were great. I'm like, oh no, am I going to produce bubblegum? But I didn't. I didn't produce bubblegum. I produced a really nuanced, just dark fruit, really great Cinso that it's just fun. So I called it Crazy Perfect because it was like, okay, well, there it is. Like, I didn't have to do much to this. This just showed up. And then I just released also a single vineyard Mourvèdre.
Okay.
I named it Hollis. So Hollis is my wife's middle name. And I had released a first Hollis in 2019 where I wanted to play around with my concrete tank. She warned me that the wine better be good if her name's going to be on it. So I think she liked it. She let me do it again. So now we've got a 100% Mourvèdre. It's coming out of Shakerage. It's coming out of a different row that I typically do not work with. A little bit more high elevation. It's lean. It's savory. It's light. And that one's really pretty. And I'm excited about that as well. And then we have the 2023 Pick Pull, which different year, long hanging time. Everybody got to take a breath. And it's beautiful in its own right. It's fresh acids, minerals, but here's the thing. Pick Pull will never be Pick Pull from France.
Sure.
And this is the really nice thing about this is like everybody's got this expectation. Who knows Pick Pull, drinks Pick Pull from France. California Pick Pull is a thing.
Yeah.
It's, we've got this amazing weather. It really tends to develop these tropical luscious notes. So these two years have really kind of shown in that way. Even though we're doing like low bricks, we're picking, we're retaining that acid, it's still showing up in a very California fashion. So I'm excited about that because I think we all live too much in like, this is what it's supposed to taste like. If it doesn't taste that way, then there's something wrong with it. And that's not true. I think if the wine is a sound made wine, then, enjoy what it gave you that year. So.
I was going to ask you about the Cinso, but what drew you to Cinso?
I love the underdogs. I love those those varietals that always get blended in. Nobody gets to see them. Like, why? So that was what drew me to Cinso.
Okay.
It's hard to source Cinso.
Yeah, there's not too much of it.
I got lucky. Don't know how lucky I'm going to get in the next few years, but I'm going to try. And that's really it. That's kind of like, okay, Pick Pull. We don't really see it that much. We see a couple of great winemakers making it here and there every now and then. Cinso, same thing. Mourvèdre, great. We had Hardy doing it for a long time. Amazing job. But now he's doing other things. So it's just kind of showing up and showing off those varietals on its own to show what they can do.
Did you notice a big difference in the Mourvèdre from your sort of new rows at
Oh, yeah.
Shake Ridge that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
working with from the previous
Higher
ones?
elevation, lower elevation, the ripeness on it. I tend to pick early, and you still have a different composition of the flavor profile. A little darker, richer, lower, a little high acid, a little lighter, higher. Yeah, depends.
Okay.
Ann Kramer went off and scoped her vineyard before she planted, and put blankets on the floor and looked at the sun and the wind and all the things in life to plant the rows that she has planted very meticulously. So every row and every kind of varietal there speaks for itself. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And that's where you've gotten the Graciano and Tempranillo from
Yeah, so
there
Graciano
also.
came out of Bokish.
Okay.
Bokish, Marcus had, he grows fantastic Graciano, and I wanted to work with Graciano. Again, single varietal, wanted to showcase it on its own. I wanted to do something fun with it, and go figure. I go after these varietals and not everybody it's not really an easy sell, right? It's a hand sell. So I'm going back to my Florida days, but I love them, and that's okay. That's what matters to me. So with my first Graciano, Marcus said, "Hey, I've got, this vineyard, and then I've got this little 3-acre vineyard behind my house." I'm like, "That's the one I want." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because it's so cute and amazing. It's behind your house, such a story." And anyway, so we did that.
Okay.
First Graciano there, and then I did a Graciano from Shake Ridge, which was phenomenal, and it was in 2020, and 2020 was a really weird year.
Yeah.
We had the world shut down, and things were not looking good. And for me, unfortunately, it was kind of like this opportunistic thing where all of a sudden there was a lot of stuff available, and I just ran with it. And that's where the first rosé came out for Graciano.
Okay. Yeah, it's another one you don't really see very often, but I really love it. It makes,
I know, right?
It makes great wine.
Yeah, it's fun. It's different.
What's the best place for people to get your wines and kind of follow what you're up to, any releases, things like that?
CaryQWines.com, right? Website.
Yep.
Always is going to have the newest releases and all the info. And if you sign up to the mailing list, I make tiny productions, so you want to at least stay in touch there. I try to keep up my social media, and then I'm working with some great, we're working with some great wine shops in the East Bay. So, I hope that at some point you also, folks will find them out there more and more now with Amy Atwood, no pressure. But yeah, CaryQ.com, CaryQWines.com.
Nice.
If you're thinking about making wine, go for it. It's expensive. It's stressful, but it's amazing. It's just perseverance, patience, an eye for what you want to do. Enjoy what you drink, enjoy what you're doing, and just keep it fun as much as you can.
Thanks for listening today. I think you'll really enjoy Cary's wines if you haven't had them before. The Cinsault and Picpole have been my favorites recently. You can find them in a wider distribution now with her partnership with Amy Atwood, and you can also grab them straight from her website, caryqwines.com, and follow what she's up to on Instagram at caryqwines. You can follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at Indie Wine Podcast. Feel free to email indiewinepodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or feedback. If you can tell your wine friends about the podcast too and help spread the word, I'd really appreciate it. Rating or subscribing helps too, of course. There's also a Patreon if you choose to support the podcast monetarily to allow for more episodes and to help defray other costs. Any amount is appreciated, and I have a small token of my appreciation to send to you also if you do. The link is in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode. Have a good one.